They said love would protect me. They were wrong. He built an empire with my sacrifices and then left me for her. But what he didn't know was who my family really was. He thought he ended my story. He just started my revenge. This isn't just a love story gone wrong. It's a legal war, a billionaire's chess game, and the sweetest revenge you'll ever see. Would you forgive or would you make them pay? If you love stories where karma hits harder than heartbreak, comment your take, share this story, and don't forget to subscribe. Because trust me, you won't want to miss how this one ends. They say revenge is a dish best served cold. 3 months ago, I was nobody about to lose everything. Today, I'm the woman who brought down a tech empire. My name is Claire Morrison, and this is how it happened. But let me take you back to where it all began. Back to the moment my perfect life shattered into 1,000 pieces. It was a Tuesday morning in January when I found the phone. The burner phone hidden in my husband's Tesla, tucked beneath the owner's manual in the glove box. I was only looking for the manual because the tire pressure light had come on. But what I found changed everything. I scrolled through the messages with shaking hands. The texts between my husband Ryan and someone named Jessica were explicit, detailed, and dated back months. 6 months of lies. 6 months of late nights he claimed were investor meetings. 6 months of business trips that were actually romantic getaways. The most recent message was from that morning. Jessica had written, "Can't wait for Napa this weekend. Told my assistant I'm visiting family." He responded, "Told Claire I have a tech conference. She bought it. She always does." I sat in that car for 20 minutes, rain drumming on the roof, reading through months of betrayal. But here's the thing that made it worse. The thing that made my hands shake so hard I nearly dropped the phone. That same morning, just 2 hours earlier, I had taken a pregnancy test. It was positive. I was going to be a mother. I had already bought baby shoes, tiny white ones with pink ribbons. They were wrapped in tissue paper in my purse, waiting for the perfect moment to surprise him at dinner. I had imagined his face, his joy, how we would celebrate this miracle together. Instead, I confronted him that night in our mansion, the home we had built together over 8 years of marriage. Ryan didn't even try to lie. He looked at me with those cold blue eyes I had once found so captivating and said, "I'm filing tomorrow. You'll get what the prenup says. $100,000 and the Prius. That's it." My voice cracked as I started to say, "Ryan, But he cut me off. "What? Going to beg? It's over, Claire. You were great for the early days, but I need someone who can keep up. Jessica gets it. She understands the business world. You're just a former journalist who gave up her career to play housewife." My hand instinctively moved to my stomach, but I said nothing. Some truths are too valuable to reveal to your enemies. And in that moment, I realized that's what my husband had become. My enemy. Let me tell you who we were, or who I thought we were. I'm Claire Morrison, 36 years old. I used to be an investigative journalist for the San Francisco Chronicle, the kind who broke stories about corporate corruption and political scandals. I was good at my job, really good. But when Ryan's startup began taking off 8 years ago, he asked me to quit. He said he needed a partner who could support him, attend events, help him network. He said it was just temporary, just until the company stabilized. I believed him. I gave up my career, my independence, my identity. I became Mrs. Ryan Morrison, the tech CEO's wife. Ryan Morrison is 42, founder and CEO of Morrison Tech, a $400 million artificial intelligence security company. To the world, he's a visionary, a genius who revolutionized data protection. To me, he had been everything, my whole world. But that night, I saw him for what he really was, a narcissist who treated people like chess pieces, moving them around to serve his goals. And Jessica Lane, 29 years old, Harvard MBA, vice president of operations at Morrison Tech. She didn't seduce my husband. No, it was far more calculated than that. She strategically positioned herself as his upgrade, the woman who could match his ambition, who could help him reach the next level of success. The next 72 hours were a masterclass in humiliation. First, I met with a local divorce attorney. She reviewed my pre-info and delivered the devastating news. It was ironclad, drafted by the best lawyers money could buy. I would walk away with exactly what Ryan promised, $100,000 in my 7-year-old Toyota Prius. No stake in the company I had supported from its infancy. No alimony. No property. Nothing. On day 2, I discovered my bank accounts were frozen. Ryan had filed a police report claiming I had stolen $5,000 before leaving. It was a lie, but it was effective. On day 3, I received an eviction notice. I had 72 hours to vacate what I thought was our home, but was legally only his mansion. And then came the final blow. Ryan announced his engagement to Jessica at TechCrunch Disrupt, one of the biggest tech conferences in the country. The video went viral. Ryan and Jessica on stage, him on one knee, her crying with joy, the audience giving them a standing ovation. The media called them Silicon Valley's new power couple. I watched that video in a Motel 6 outside San Jose, sitting on a bed that smelled like bleach. With $3,200 to my name and morning sickness, I was hiding from the world. I had hit rock bottom, or so I thought. But you know what they say about rock bottom. It's the perfect place to build a foundation. And I was about to build something Ryan Morrison would never see coming. There was one person I could call, one person with the power to help me. But calling him meant admitting I had failed, meant swallowing my pride and asking for help from someone I had barely spoken to in years. My uncle, Marcus Sterling. Marcus Sterling is 68 years old, a legendary billionaire attorney known in certain circles as the fixer of the untouchables. If you're a Fortune 500 CEO facing a scandal, if you're a politician caught in a compromising position, if you're anyone with money and a problem that seems impossible to solve, you call Marcus Sterling. He had been absent most of my life, always too busy with high-profile cases to attend birthdays or graduations. We had barely spoken since my mother's funeral 6 years ago, but I remembered something he had said at that funeral, words that had haunted me ever since. I failed your mother, Claire. I told her to be strong, to fight her divorce alone. She died 3 years later, broken and penniless. I've built an empire since then, but I've never forgiven myself. So I called him. My hands shook as I dialed the number I had saved but never used. Marcus Sterling's office, a professional voice answered. This is Claire Morrison. I need to speak with my uncle. There was a pause, then, please hold. 30 seconds later, his deep voice came through the line. Claire. Just my name, nothing else. I started crying, something I had sworn I wouldn't do. Uncle Marcus, I need help. My husband is divorcing me for his mistress. The prenup is ironclad. I'm going to lose everything. I have nowhere to go. And I stopped myself before saying I was pregnant. Not yet, not over the phone. The silence stretched for what felt like forever. Then he said, don't sign anything. Don't speak to anyone, especially not Ryan's lawyers. I'm sending someone to you. We'll fix this. You don't understand. The prenup is Claire. His voice was firm but gentle. I failed your mother. I won't fail you. Where are you? I gave him the motel address, my voice barely a whisper. Someone will be there in 2 hours. Don't leave that room. He hung up. I sat there, phone in my hand, wondering if I had just made the right decision or if I was about to disappoint yet another person in my life. 2 hours later, exactly to the minute, there was a knock on my motel door. I opened it to find a woman in her early 30s, professionally dressed in a sharp navy suit, carrying a leather briefcase. She had kind eyes but a firm handshake. Mrs. Morrison, I'm Sarah Reeves, Senior Associate at Sterling Legal Group. Your uncle sent me. She came in and set up a small workspace on the motel's tiny desk. Then she pulled out a recording device. Tell me everything, she said. Every detail, every document, every conversation. Nothing is too small. I talked for 3 hours straight. Sarah took notes, asked questions, and recorded everything. When I finally finished, she looked at me with an expression I couldn't quite read. Mrs. Morrison, Claire, I'm going to be honest with you. The prenup is extremely well drafted. In a normal case, you'd be looking at exactly what Ryan offered. But this isn't a normal case. You have something most people don't. What's that? I asked, exhausted. You have Marcus Sterling. And more importantly, you have yourself. You were an investigative journalist. You know how to find the truth, how to follow money, how to uncover lies. We're not just going to fight a divorce. We're going to build a case. A case for what? Sarah smiled, and it was not a kind smile. It was the smile of a shark who had just spotted blood in the water. For everything Ryan Morrison doesn't want the world to know. The next morning, I met Marcus for the first time in 2 years. His office in downtown San Francisco was everything you'd expect from a billionaire lawyer. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the bay, mahogany furniture, walls covered with framed photos of Marcus with presidents, CEOs, celebrities, and judges. But one photo caught my eye. Marcus shaking hands with the FBI director at what looked like a charity gala. Marcus noticed me looking. That was 3 years ago. Fundraiser for victims of financial crime. He said it casually, but I filed the information away. My journalistic instincts were already kicking back in. He gestured to a chair across from his massive desk. Sit. I sat. He studied me for a long moment, his silver hair and sharp features reminding me so much of my mother it hurt. Claire, I'm going to tell you something Sarah didn't. I'm not going to just take over your case and fight for you. I'm going to give you the tools, the resources, and the legal strategy, but you're going to do the work. I frowned. I don't understand. Isn't that what I'm paying you for? You're not paying me anything, your family. But more importantly, you need to fight this yourself, not because I won't help, but because you need to know you can. Your mother, my sister, she relied on others to fight her battles. When her husband destroyed her in their divorce, she had no skills, no resources, no way to stand on her own. She died broken. I won't let that happen to you. His words stung, but they also awakened something in me. A spark of the person I used to be, the investigative journalist who took down corrupt politicians and exposed corporate fraud. What do you need me to do? I asked. Marcus leaned back in his chair. I need you to investigate your husband, every transaction, every business deal, every hidden account. You're going to find what Ryan doesn't want anyone to see. Sarah will teach you the legal framework. I'll provide the resources. But you, Claire, you're going to be the one who brings him down. And if I can't find anything, then you'll take the prenup settlement and walk away. But I don't think that's going to happen. Men like Ryan Morrison always have secrets, and women like you always know how to find them. He slid a folder across the desk. Inside was a contract, not for legal services, but something else entirely. This is a consulting agreement. As of today, you work for Sterling Legal Group as an investigative consultant. You'll have access to our databases, our private investigators, our forensic accountants. Your job is to find the truth about Morrison Tech and your husband. I looked at the contract, then back at Marcus. Why are you really doing this? His expression softened, just slightly. Because I owe your mother a debt I can never repay. Because I've spent 30 years building power and I couldn't save the one person who mattered. And because, Claire, you remind me of her. But you're stronger. Don't let Ryan Morrison take that strength away. I signed the contract, and in that moment, everything changed. I wasn't a victim anymore. I was a hunter, and Ryan Morrison had just become my prey. The transformation didn't happen overnight. It took days of training, late nights studying corporate law, and relearning skills I thought I had left behind when I quit journalism. Sarah Reeves became my mentor and, surprisingly, my friend. She taught me how to read financial statements, how to trace shell companies, how to recognize the patterns of hidden assets. Every morning at 7, we met at Marcus's office. Every night, I fell into bed at the motel exhausted but energized. The key, Sarah explained one morning, spreading documents across the conference table, is understanding that men like Ryan don't just have one set of books. They have multiple layers. The public records, the private records, and the hidden records. We need to find layer 3. I studied the Morrison Tech financial statements. On paper, everything looked legitimate. A successful AI security company with steady growth, major contracts, and a valuation of $400 million. But something nagged at me, a journalist's intuition, that the story didn't quite add up. Ryan used to talk about his investors, I said, thinking back to countless dinner parties and networking events. He always mentioned this one particular fund, something based in the Cayman Islands. He said it was standard for tech companies. Sarah's eyes lit up. Tell me more. I closed my eyes. trying to remember. Meridian Capital Partners. He said they were early investors, that they had a special arrangement because they believed in his vision before anyone else did. Sarah was already typing. Cayman Islands, you said? Yes. Is that important? She looked up at me, a slow smile spreading across her face. Claire, the Cayman Islands is one of the biggest tax havens in the world. If Ryan has money there, it means he's hiding something. Over the next 2 weeks, I did what I used to do best. I investigated. I called former colleagues from my journalism days, people who owed me favors or who were willing to help for old time's sake. I reconnected with sources in the financial world, tech industry insiders, and even a few hackers who operated in legal gray areas. But the biggest break came from someone unexpected. My old friend David Parker, a forensic accountant who I had worked with on a corruption story 5 years earlier. Claire Morrison, David said when he answered my call. I thought you'd gone completely domestic. What brings you back to the dark side? I need help tracking offshore accounts, I said, specifically in the Cayman Islands. There was a pause. This is about your divorce, isn't it? I saw the news. Ryan Morrison is a piece of work. Can you help me or not? Send me what you have. I'll see what I can find. I sent David everything. Company records, tax returns that I had copied before Ryan locked me out of his home office, even credit card statements from years ago. Then I waited. During those waiting days, I had to face something I had been avoiding. My pregnancy. I was almost 8 weeks along, morning sickness hitting me every day, exhaustion making it hard to focus. But I told no one. Not Sarah, not Marcus, not even my doctor. This secret was mine, the one card Ryan didn't know I held. I went to my first ultrasound alone, sitting in a clinic in a strip mall, surrounded by excited couples. When the technician found the heartbeat, when I heard that rapid flutter on the monitor, tears streamed down my face. Do you want to know the sex? The technician asked. Not yet, I whispered. Not until I know she'll be safe. I left the clinic with a grainy ultrasound photo tucked in my wallet, hidden behind old credit cards and receipts. My daughter, my reason to fight. That same day, David called. Claire, you're not going to believe what I found. Ryan has $12 million in a Cayman Islands account under Meridian Capital Partners. But here's the interesting part. He's the sole beneficial owner of that fund. It's a shell company. He's been moving money there for 3 years. My heart raced. Can you prove it? I can give you a trail, bank transfers, registration documents, board meeting minutes where he references the fund. It's all buried in layers of corporate structure, but it's there. I'm sending you everything now. When Sarah saw the evidence, she actually laughed. Oh, Ryan Morrison, you got greedy, didn't you? We prepared for Ryan's deposition, scheduled for the following week. I spent hours with Sarah, practicing questions and answers, learning how to present evidence without revealing our entire strategy. Marcus sat in on some sessions, offering advice, but mostly just watching me work. You're good at this, he said one evening after Sarah had left. You always were, even as a child. You asked questions. You didn't accept easy answers. Your mother was so proud of you when you became a journalist. It was the first time he had really talked about my mother since I had come to him for help. Why didn't you help her? I asked, the question I had wanted to ask for years. Marcus was quiet for a long moment. Because I was arrogant. I thought teaching her to be independent meant making her fight alone. I thought asking for help was weakness. I told her real strength meant doing everything yourself. He looked at me, his eyes reflecting old pain. I was wrong. She needed someone in her corner, and I wasn't there. She died 3 years after her divorce, alone and broken. That's on me. I'm not her, I said softly. No, Marcus agreed. You're stronger, but even the strongest people deserve someone in their corner. That's why I'm here. Not to fight for you, but to fight with you. The day of Ryan's deposition arrived. We met at a neutral law office in downtown San Francisco, a conference room with harsh fluorescent lights and a long table where enemies faced each other across polished wood. Ryan walked in with his lawyer, Harrison Cole, a slick attorney in an expensive suit who specialized in protecting wealthy men from their ex-wives. Ryan looked confident, almost amused, as if this was all a minor inconvenience. He barely glanced at me. The deposition started routinely. Questions about assets, income, the history of our marriage. Harrison objected frequently, protecting his client. Ryan answered with practiced ease, the same charm he used in business meetings and investor pitches. Then Sarah slid a document across the table. "Mr. Morrison, do you recognize this bank transfer?" Ryan glanced at it, his expression not changing. "I'd need to review it more carefully. It's a transfer of $2 million from Morrison Tech's operating account to Meridian Capital Partners in the Cayman Islands. Your signature is on the authorization." "Meridian is one of our investors. That could be any number of legitimate transactions." Sarah smiled. "Interesting, because according to Cayman Islands Corporate Registry, which is public record, you are the sole beneficial owner of Meridian Capital Partners. So essentially, you transferred $2 million from your company to yourself without declaring it on your tax returns or disclosing it to your board of directors." The room went silent. Harrison's face paled. Ryan's jaw tightened, the first crack in his confident facade. "That's absurd," Harrison said quickly. "We'll need time to review these allegations." "Of course," Sarah said smoothly. "We have 11 more transfers just like it, spanning 3 years, totaling $12 million. I watched Ryan's face as the reality sank in. He looked at me for the first time since entering the room, and I saw something I had never seen before in his eyes. Fear. Harrison called for a recess. 30 minutes later, they returned with a settlement offer, $8 million plus the mansion. Sarah looked at me. Marcus, sitting quietly in the corner, said nothing. This was my decision. My hand hovered over the pen. $8 million, more than I had ever imagined. I could disappear, raise my daughter in peace, start over completely. But then I thought about Jessica Lane, about the woman who had helped destroy my marriage, about Ryan's smug confidence, his cruelty, his certainty that he would win because he always won. I put the pen down. "No," I said, "we go to trial." Ryan's face turned red. "You're making a mistake." I smiled, and it felt good. "I've made mistakes, Ryan. Marrying you was one of them. But this isn't a mistake. This is justice, Mom." We left the deposition, and for the first time in months, I felt like myself again. Not the broken woman in the motel room, but the investigative journalist who never backed down from a fight. But as Sarah and I celebrated over coffee that afternoon, my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "We need to talk, woman to woman. Coffee tomorrow? Jessica Lane." I showed the message to Sarah. Her expression turned serious. "It's a trap," she said. "I know," I replied. "But I'm going anyway, because whatever Jessica wants to say, I need to hear it." What I didn't know was that Jessica Lane was about to reveal something that would change everything, and that the $8 million offer I had just turned down would soon look like a fortune I would never see again. I met Jessica Lane the next morning at an upscale cafe in Palo Alto, the kind of place where tech executives made million-dollar deals over artisanal coffee. She was already there when I arrived, sitting at a corner table, looking effortlessly polished in a cream-colored blazer and designer sunglasses she didn't take off even indoors. She stood when I approached, extending her hand as if we were business colleagues meeting for the first time, not two women connected by betrayal. "Claire, thank you for coming. I wasn't sure you would." I didn't shake her hand. I sat down across from her, my purse held tightly in my lap, every journalistic instinct telling me to observe, to listen, to gather information. Jessica lowered her hand gracefully, unbothered by the rejection. She had probably expected it. "I'll get right to the point," she said, her voice warm but somehow empty, like a corporate presentation designed to seem human. "You should take the settlement offer, the $8 million plus the mansion. It's generous, more than fair, and honestly, more than you'll get if you keep fighting." "Why do you care what I do?" I asked. She smiled, and it was the smile of someone who held all the cards. "Because, Claire, I actually respect you. I've done my research. You were a real journalist once, someone who exposed corruption and fought for truth. You gave that up for Ryan, and now look where it got you. I don't want to see you destroyed completely." "How noble of you," I said flatly. "The woman who helped destroy my marriage now wants to save me from destruction." "I didn't destroy your marriage," Jessica said, her tone matter of fact. "Your marriage destroyed itself." Ryan is brilliant but complicated. He needed someone who could match his ambition, who understood the tech world, who could be a true partner in business and life. That's not you. It was never you. No judgment, just fact. The words stung because there was truth in them, twisted truth, but truth nonetheless. I had given up my career, my identity, everything to support Ryan's dreams, and it hadn't been enough. So you're here out of the goodness of your heart? I asked. To give me friendly advice? Jessica leaned forward, lowering her voice. I'm here because in 48 hours, tech giant announces a $500 million acquisition of Morrison Tech. After that, all assets get folded into corporate structures you'll never be able to touch. That 12 million in the Cayman Islands? It's already being moved. The mansion, it'll be transferred to a holding company. Everything will be beyond your reach. My stomach dropped. You're lying. Am I? She pulled out her phone, scrolled for a moment, and then showed me a screen. It was an internal memo from tech giant, marked confidential, with a date 2 days away. Announcement scheduled for Friday. Press conference at 10 a.m. After that, Ryan's net worth jumps to $180 million, and your window of opportunity closes forever. I stared at the memo, my mind racing. If this was true, if the acquisition happened, everything would change. The leverage I had, the evidence Sarah and I had built, all of it might become irrelevant in the face of corporate restructuring and armies of lawyers. Why are you telling me this? I asked again. Jessica put her phone away and did something unexpected. She reached across the table and almost touched my hand, stopping just short. Because Ryan told me you couldn't have children, that it was one of the reasons he wanted to end things. He said you two had tried for years, that you had failed. But Claire, you're glowing. You have that look. I've seen it before in friends, in colleagues. You're pregnant right now, aren't you? The world seemed to stop. My hand instinctively moved to my stomach before I could stop it, and Jessica's eyes followed the movement. She knew. She had guessed, and I had just confirmed it. I see, Jessica said softly. Turns out Ryan was wrong about a lot of things. Tears burned in my eyes, but I refused to let them fall. What do you want, Jessica? I want you to take the money and disappear. Raise your child somewhere peaceful, somewhere far from Silicon Valley and its sharks. Because if you keep fighting Ryan, you'll lose. The acquisition is happening. The money is being hidden in ways you can't trace. And Ryan has resources you can't imagine. You can walk away comfortable, or you can walk away with nothing. Your choice. She stood up, putting on her sunglasses, even though we were inside. Oh, and Claire, that Cayman Islands account you found? That's just the decoy, the account Ryan wanted you to find so you'd think you won. The real money is somewhere you'll never find it. Think about that. She walked away, leaving me sitting alone at that cafe table, my coffee untouched, my mind reeling. I called Sarah immediately. She's bluffing, Sarah said after I explained everything. It's a psychological tactic. They want you scared. What if she's not bluffing? What if the acquisition is real? Then we verify it. I'll make calls. But Claire, don't make any decisions based on what Jessica Lane tells you. She's Ryan's ally, not yours. But over the next 24 hours, Sarah's contacts confirmed it. The acquisition was real, scheduled for announcement in 48 hours. Tech giant was buying Morrison Tech for $500 million. Ryan Morrison was about to become one of Silicon Valley's wealthiest entrepreneurs. We held an emergency meeting in Marcus's office. Sarah, Marcus, and I sat around his conference table, the weight of the situation pressing down on us. We can still fight this, Sarah said, but I heard the doubt in her voice. The hidden assets, the Cayman accounts, we have evidence. Evidence that becomes complicated once corporate structures change, Marcus said quietly. Jessica Lane is smarter than we gave her credit for. She tipped her hand to scare Claire, but she also told the truth. After the acquisition, everything becomes exponentially more difficult. So I should take the $8 million, I asked, hating how defeated I sounded. Marcus looked at me for a long moment. That depends on what you want. Justice or security. Revenge or peace. You can't have both. I thought about my daughter growing inside me, about the life I could give her with $8 million. A good life, a safe life. We could move somewhere quiet, somewhere Ryan would never find us. I could raise her in peace. But then I thought about Ryan's face at that deposition, his smug certainty that he would win. I thought about Jessica's condescending pity, her assumption that I would give up because that's what weak women do. Before I could answer, my phone rang. It was a number I didn't recognize, but something made me answer. Mrs. Morrison, this is Maria Lopez. I don't know if you remember me. I used to be Ryan's executive assistant. I remember, I said, putting the call on speaker. Maria had been with Ryan for 5 years before being suddenly fired 3 weeks before his affair with Jessica became public. What can I do for you? It's more what I can do for you, Maria said, her voice shaking. I've been following your divorce in the news. I know things, Mrs. Morrison. Things about Ryan and Jessica that you need to know. But I can't talk over the phone. Can we meet? I looked at Marcus and Sarah. They both nodded. Yes, I said. Tell me where and when. We met Maria that evening at a diner off Highway 101, far from Silicon Valley's watchful eyes. She was in her early 40s, professional but clearly frightened, looking over her shoulder constantly. Thank you for meeting me, she said, sliding into the booth across from me. Sarah and Marcus sat on either side of me, a show of force and protection. What do you know, Maria? I asked gently. She pulled out a flash drive and set it on the table like it was made of plutonium. Ryan fired me because I discovered something I wasn't supposed to see. Jessica has a private encrypted server in her penthouse. She calls it her insurance policy. It has files on everyone, Ryan, the board members, investors, even Ryan's lawyer, Harrison Cole. Blackmail material, proof of financial crimes, recorded conversations, everything. My heart started racing. How do you know about this? Because I helped her set it up, Maria said, tears forming in her eyes. She told me it was for company security, that Ryan knew about it, but then I saw what was actually on it. Emails about embezzlement, plans to hide money, evidence of fraud. When I confronted her, she threatened me. 2 days later, I was fired. Ryan gave me a severance package and made me sign an NDA. I've been too scared to say anything until now. Why now? Marcus asked, his lawyer instincts sharp. Because I saw her engagement announcement. I saw Ryan and Jessica playing happy couple for the cameras, and I realized they were going to get away with everything. That's not justice. Mrs. Morrison didn't deserve what they did to her. Sarah leaned forward. This server, do you know where it is? In her penthouse, hidden in her home office. But there's more. I still have my old security key card. She never deactivated it. I could get you in. No, Marcus said immediately. That's breaking and entering. Any evidence obtained illegally would be inadmissible. But you could use my card, Maria said. I was her assistant. I have legitimate access to retrieve personal belongings. If I happen to take the wrong items, she trailed off, the implication clear. I looked at Marcus. Is that legal? It's a gray area, he admitted. But more importantly, it's dangerous. If Jessica discovers what we're doing, she could have you arrested, could spin this into harassment or stalking. Or, I said slowly, we could finally see what Ryan and Jessica have really been hiding. We could find the real money, the real evidence, everything. The next day, everything fell apart. Ryan filed for restraining orders against me, claiming I had been harassing him and Jessica. He provided text messages, allegedly from my phone, threatening them. Messages I had never sent. His lawyers had manufactured evidence, and a sympathetic judge granted the order. Then my original lawyer, the one I had consulted before going to Marcus, came forward with a statement saying I had tried to bribe him to falsify documents. Another lie, but it was in the news, my reputation being destroyed in real time. And finally, the acquisition was officially announced. Ryan and Jessica appeared at Tech Giant headquarters. Press conference, cameras flashing, announcing the $500 million deal. Ryan was hailed as a visionary. Jessica was praised as the brilliant executive who helped make it happen. They looked like the perfect power couple. I watched the press conference from Marcus's office, Sarah beside me, both of us silent as our case seemed to crumble in real time. I can't win, I whispered. He's too powerful, too connected. He's always 3 steps ahead. Marcus had been standing by the window looking out at the San Francisco skyline. Now he turned to face me, and his expression was different from anything I had seen before. Not the confident lawyer, not the distant uncle, but something raw and real. Your mother said the same thing to me once, he said quietly, during her divorce. She said she couldn't win, that her husband was too powerful. I told her to be strong, to keep fighting, to never give up. I thought I was helping her. I thought I was teaching her to be independent and resilient. He crossed the room and sat down beside me. But what I really did was abandon her when she needed me most. I told her strength meant fighting alone. I was wrong, Claire. Strength means knowing when to ask for help. It means building a team. It means using every resource, every advantage, every weapon you have. I don't have any weapons, I said, my voice breaking. Yes, you do. You have the truth. You have Maria's information. You have your investigative skills. And you have me. He took my hand, something he had never done. I let your mother die alone and broken. I won't let that happen to you, but at Claire, you have to choose. Do you want justice or do you want revenge? I thought about my daughter, about the future I wanted to give her. I thought about everything Ryan had taken from me. My career, my identity, my dignity. And I thought about what Jessica had said, that some women know when to walk away. I want the truth, I said finally. I want Ryan and Jessica to face what they've done. I want my daughter to grow up knowing her mother didn't give up, even when everything seemed impossible. Marcus squeezed my hand. Then let's find it, whatever it takes. That night, 3 things happened that would change everything. First, David Parker called with new information. He had traced additional offshore accounts, not in Ryan's name, but in Jessica's, holding over $80 million moved from Morrison Tech over 2 years. Second, Maria confirmed she could access Jessica's penthouse the next morning when Jessica would be at the tech giant headquarters for final acquisition paperwork. And third, I got a call from the emergency room. I had started cramping that evening, sharp pains that made me double over. By the time Sarah rushed me to the hospital, I was bleeding. The doctors ran tests, did an ultrasound, and delivered the terrifying news. I was on the verge of losing my baby. The stress, they said. Too much stress on my body, on my pregnancy. They could try to stabilize me, but I needed to eliminate all sources of stress immediately. Marcus arrived at the hospital at midnight, his face drawn with worry. He sat beside my bed, holding my hand, and for the first time since my mother's funeral, I saw tears in his eyes. "I'm sorry," he whispered. "I pushed you too hard. I wanted you to be strong, but I'm doing the same thing I did to your mother." "No," I said, my voice hoarse. "You're here, that's the difference. You're not making me fight alone. Then let me fight for you now. Let me take over. You focus on staying healthy, on protecting that baby. I'll handle Ryan and Jessica." I wanted to say yes, wanted to let Marcus take control and make everything go away. But as I lay there in that hospital bed, my hand on my stomach where my daughter was fighting to survive, I realized something. This wasn't just about defeating Ryan anymore. This wasn't about revenge or even justice. This was about what kind of person I wanted my daughter to see when she looked at her mother. Did I want her to see someone who gave up? Or someone who fought for what was right, even when it was hard? "No," I said softly, "I need to finish this, but I can't do it alone. Will you help me? Really help me. Not just provide resources, but be there, fight with me?" Marcus's tears fell freely now. "Yes, whatever you need, I'm here." The doctor stabilized my pregnancy over the next 24 hours. I stayed in the hospital bed, following orders, resting. But my mind never stopped working. Maria retrieved the encrypted server using her old key card, claiming she was collecting personal items she had left behind. She brought it directly to Marcus's office, where his forensic IT team began cracking the encryption. What they found was beyond anything we had imagined, and it revealed the real mastermind behind everything wasn't Jessica Lane. It was Ryan Morrison, and his plan was far more elaborate, far more criminal, and far more dangerous than any of us had realized. The encrypted server that Maria had retrieved sat on Marcus's conference table like Pandora's box. His IT team worked through the night, cracking layer after layer of security. By morning, they had everything, and everything changed what we thought we knew about Ryan Morrison and Jessica Lane. I sat in Marcus's office, still weak from my hospital stay, but determined to see this through. Sarah was there, along with Marcus's head of forensic accounting. They spread documents across the table, digital printouts of emails, financial records, and audio files that Jessica had meticulously saved. "This is bigger than divorce," Marcus said quietly. "This is federal." He played the first audio file. It was Ryan's voice, recorded during what sounded like a private meeting. "The AI security product doesn't actually work," Ryan said, his tone casual, almost amused. "It's smoke and mirrors. We're using open source code, repackaging it, and selling it as revolutionary technology. Tech giant won't figure it out until after the acquisition closes. By then we'll have the money, and they'll have the problem." Which Jessica's voice responded, "What about the board? They'll be liable." "Let them. We've structured everything so the liability falls on Morrison Tech's existing entity. After the acquisition, you and I walk away clean with our offshore accounts intact." I felt sick. He's committing fraud. He's selling a fake product for $500 million. "It gets worse," Sarah said, pulling up financial documents. "Jessica has been embezzling from Morrison Tech for 2 years. $80 million moved through shell companies into offshore accounts. But look at the authorization signatures." She pointed to digital signatures on transfer documents. Ryan's signature appeared on every single one. "He knew," I whispered. "Ryan knew Jessica was stealing from the company." "He didn't just know," Marcus said. "He orchestrated it. Look at the dates. The embezzlement started the same month Ryan began his affair with Jessica. This was always the plan. Create a fake product, inflate the company's value, secure a massive acquisition, embezzle real money before anyone notices, then let the company collapse while they escape with hundreds of millions." The room spun. I gripped the table for support. "But why the divorce?" I asked. "Why go through all of that?" Sarah pulled up another file, an email from Ryan to Jessica dated 6 months earlier. "Claire is becoming a problem. She asks too many questions, notices too many discrepancies. As my wife, she has legal access to company information. We need her out completely before the acquisition. I'll file for divorce, use the prenup to leave her with nothing, and marry you. That way, if anything goes wrong, spousal privilege protects us both." I read the email 3 times, each word cutting deeper. The affair, the cruelty, the public humiliation. It had all been calculated, strategic. I wasn't just a wife Ryan no longer wanted. I was a liability he needed to eliminate. "There's more," Marcus said, his voice grim. He played another audio file. This one was recent, recorded just days ago. Ryan and Jessica talking in what sounded like her penthouse. "The FBI is sniffing around," Jessica said, sounding worried. "Someone tipped them off about the offshore accounts." "Let them look," Ryan responded. "When I get arrested, it'll be for tax evasion, maybe securities fraud. White-collar crimes, I'll get 3 years maximum in a minimum security facility. You take the money, move it to the Cayman accounts we set up in your name only. When I get out, we're set for life. What about Claire?" Ryan laughed. It was a cold, cruel sound. "Claire gets nothing. She signed the prenup. Even if she fights it, by the time any court case resolves, all the assets will be beyond her reach. She'll spend years in litigation and end up with exactly what I offered her. $100,000 in a Prius." Jessica's voice turned sharp. "And if she keeps digging, she has her uncle now." "Marcus Sterling is good, but he's not magic. We've covered our tracks. Even if they find the offshore accounts, we've structured everything to be technically legal from a divorce standpoint. The business fraud is separate. They can't touch you, and I'll take a light sentence. It's all planned." The recording ended. The room was silent except for the hum of Marcus's computer. "He's right," Sarah said quietly. "From a pure divorce law perspective, most of this is untouchable. The offshore accounts in Jessica's name are legally hers. The business fraud is corporate crime, not marital assets. Even with all this evidence, in a divorce court, Claire might still end up with very little." "But it's fraud," Diptoran said, my voice rising. "It's embezzlement. It's criminal." "Yes," Marcus agreed, "which is why we're not fighting this in divorce court anymore. We're building a federal case." He pulled out his phone and made a call, putting it on speaker. "Sterling," a woman's voice answered. "It's been a while. Agent Patricia Reynolds, I need to meet with you. Today. It's urgent." "This is about the Morrison case?" "Yes, and it's bigger than you think. 3 hours later, we sat in a secure conference room with FBI Special Agent Patricia Reynolds and her team. They reviewed the evidence Maria had provided, listened to the audio recordings, studied the financial documents. "This is enough for warrants," Agent Reynolds said. "Wire fraud, securities fraud, conspiracy to commit fraud. We can move on this immediately." "There's a complication," Marcus said. "The evidence was obtained through questionable means. Jessica Lane's encrypted server was removed from her home by a former employee who still had access." Agent Reynolds considered this. "Did this employee have legal access at the time of retrieval?" "Gray area," Marcus admitted. "She had a key card that was never deactivated, and she claimed to be retrieving personal property." "Then we'll work with it. The audio recordings of federal crimes give us enough for independent investigation. We'll build our own case using this as a roadmap. Mr. Sterling, Ms. Morrison, you've done outstanding work here." "What happens now?" I asked. "Now we set a trap. We let Ryan Morrison think he's won." The FBI's plan was elegant in its simplicity. They would allow the tech giant acquisition to proceed, but would freeze the funds before they could be transferred offshore. They would arrest Ryan at the moment he thought he had succeeded, catching him in the act of executing his fraud. But there was a problem. The acquisition was scheduled to close in 72 hours. The FBI needed more time to secure warrants, coordinate with financial crimes units, and get cooperation from international authorities. "Can you delay the closing?" Agent Reynolds asked. Marcus shook his head. "Not without tipping our hand. Ryan would know something was wrong." "Then we need a distraction," Shira said. "Something to make Ryan and Jessica think they're under attack from a different direction." An idea formed in my mind, something risky, but potentially brilliant. "I'll give them what they want," I said. "I'll accept the settlement, $8 million plus the mansion. I'll sign the papers, make it public, let Ryan think he won. He'll be so relieved, so confident, he won't see the real trap closing around him." Marcus frowned. "That's dangerous. If Ryan suspects anything, he could accelerate his timeline, move the money faster." "Or," I countered, "he'll relax. He'll think I finally gave up. He'll proceed exactly as planned, and the FBI will be waiting." Agent Reynolds nodded slowly. "It could work, but Ms. Morrison, you need to understand what you're doing. You'll be signing away your rights to most of the marital assets. If something goes wrong with the federal case, if we can't make charges stick, you'll have settled for a fraction of what you might have won." "I know," I said, "but this isn't about the money anymore. It's about making sure Ryan and Jessica face justice for what they've done. Not just to me, but to everyone they've defrauded." That night, I called Ryan's lawyer, Harrison Cole. "Mr. Cole, this is Claire Morrison. I'm ready to settle. I'll accept the $8 million offer." There was a pause, then barely concealed triumph in his voice. "I'll have papers drawn up immediately. We can sign tomorrow." "One condition," I said. "I want Ryan there. I want to see his face when I sign away my rights to everything." Another pause. "I'm sure that can be arranged." We met the next day at a neutral law office, cameras and witnesses present to make it official. Ryan walked in looking victorious, Jessica on his arm like a trophy. He was already wearing a tech giant polo shirt, already playing the part of the newly acquired executive. I signed the papers. $8 million, the mansion, full release of all claims to Morrison Tech, its assets, and any future earnings. Ryan smiled as I signed the last page. "Smart choice, Claire. You could have dragged this out for years and ended up with nothing." I looked up at him, and for the first time in months, I smiled back. A real smile. "You're right, Ryan. This is the smart choice." He didn't know that under the table my phone was recording everything. He didn't know that Agent Reynolds and her team were 3 blocks away, waiting. He didn't know that in 48 hours, when the acquisition closed and the money started moving, federal agents would be watching every transaction. Ryan and Jessica left the office victorious. Harrison Cole congratulated them on their win. I watched them go, Sarah and Marcus flanking me. "Are you okay?" Sarah asked quietly. "Yes," I said. And I meant it, because I had just given Ryan Morrison exactly what he wanted, the illusion of victory. And in his confidence, he would make the mistakes that would destroy him. 2 days later, the tech giant acquisition closed. $500 million officially changed hands. Ryan and Jessica celebrated with a party at their new penthouse, photos flooding social media of Silicon Valley's newest power couple. That same night, Jessica attempted to transfer $80 million from her offshore accounts to new accounts in the Cayman Islands. The FBI was waiting. At 6 a.m. the following morning, federal agents executed simultaneous raids on Ryan's home, Jessica's penthouse, and Morrison Tech headquarters. The raids were coordinated with financial crimes units who froze all offshore accounts associated with Meridian Capital Partners and the shell companies Jessica had created. I watched the news coverage from Marcus's office, Sarah beside me, both of us silent as cameras showed Ryan Morrison being led out of his mansion in handcuffs. The charges were extensive: wire fraud, securities fraud, conspiracy to commit fraud, money laundering, and embezzlement. The evidence the FBI had gathered using Maria's information as a roadmap was overwhelming. Within hours, tech giants suspended the acquisition pending investigation. Within days, they filed a lawsuit against Ryan and Morrison Tech for fraud, seeking to recover the $500 million plus damages. I should have felt victorious. Instead, I felt empty. "Why am I not happy?" I asked Marcus. He put his hand on my shoulder. "Because revenge never makes us happy. It just closes wounds. The happiness comes later when you build something new." But the story wasn't over, because 3 days after Ryan's arrest, Jessica Lane disappeared. Jessica Lane vanished the same day Ryan was arrested. No forwarding address, no word to her lawyer, no statement to the press. One moment she was preparing to face charges alongside Ryan, and the next she was gone. The FBI issued warrants for her arrest. Interpol was notified. Her passport was flagged. But Jessica was smart, calculating, and she had planned for this contingency. "She's probably in a country without an extradition treaty," Agent Reynolds said during an update meeting at Marcus's office. "She has resources, multiple identities, and we estimate at least $40 million she managed to move before we froze her accounts." "40 million?" I asked, stunned. "I thought you froze everything." "We froze the accounts we knew about, but Jessica had backups to her backups. She was meticulous. Some money got through." I felt the rage building. Ryan was in custody, facing 20 years in federal prison, but Jessica had escaped. The woman who had helped destroy my marriage, who had embezzled millions, who had called me to gloat about her victory, was free and wealthy somewhere beyond our reach. "This isn't justice," I said. Marcus was studying something on his laptop, his expression unreadable. "Give it time." "Time? She's gone, Marcus. She won." He looked up at me, and there was something in his eyes I couldn't quite read. "Did she?" Over the next week, more details of Ryan's fraud emerged. The AI security product that Morrison Tech had sold for millions was indeed based on stolen open-source code. The company had no proprietary technology, no real innovation. It was all marketing and lies. Tech Giant's lawsuit grew to include not just the $500 million purchase price, but damages for reputational harm. They were seeking over $1 billion. Ryan's lawyer tried to negotiate a plea deal, 10 years in exchange for revealing the location of hidden assets and cooperating against Jessica Lane. The prosecutor's office was considering it. I visited Ryan in jail. I told myself it was to get closure, to see him defeated. But really, I wanted answers. He looked terrible. The confident tech CEO was gone, replaced by a tired man in an orange jumpsuit. He sat across from me in the visitor's room, a glass barrier between us, speaking through a phone. "Why'd you come?" he asked. "To understand," I said. "Was any of it real? Our marriage, our life together?" "Any of it." Ryan was quiet for a long moment. "In the beginning, yes, I loved you, Claire, or I thought I did. But somewhere along the way, I realized love was just another transaction." Jessica understood that. She didn't love me, she valued me, and I valued her. It was honest in a way our marriage never was. "So you threw away 8 years for what? Money? Power?" "For freedom," Ryan said. "The freedom to be who I really am without pretending to be the good husband, the faithful partner. With Jessica, I didn't have to pretend." "You're going to prison for 20 years, Ryan. That's not freedom." He smiled, and it was chilling. "Watch the news, Claire. This isn't over." I left the jail more disturbed than when I arrived. Ryan's confidence, even in custody, unsettled me. It felt like he still knew something we didn't. That night, I was proven right. Ryan declared bankruptcy from his jail cell. Every asset, every account, every piece of property was now part of a bankruptcy estate. The mansion I had been awarded in the settlement, gone, seized by the bankruptcy trustee. The $8 million? Frozen, subject to bankruptcy proceedings, where I would be just one creditor among hundreds. But more devastating was what came next. Ryan's lawyers revealed that years earlier, he had transferred his shares in Morrison Tech to a Delaware blind trust with Jessica Lane as the sole trustee. The transfer had been documented, filed, and was completely legal. Even though the company was now worthless, any future value, any recovery from Tech Giant's lawsuit, any residual assets would belong to that trust. And Jessica, the trustee, was unreachable. I sat in Marcus's office, staring at the bankruptcy filing, my hands shaking. "He planned this all along," I whispered. "The bankruptcy, the trust, everything. He knew if he got caught, he'd lose everything. So he made sure Jessica got it all first." "And then he got arrested on purpose," Sarah added, her voice filled with anger. "A short federal sentence in exchange for making sure all the money is beyond anyone's reach. When he gets out in 10 years, Jessica will be waiting with their fortune." "Can we fight the bankruptcy by I asked. Marcus shook his head. "The transfers happened years ago. They're legitimate. And with Ryan in prison, there's no income to garnish, no assets to seize. You'll be lucky to get $100,000 from the bankruptcy estate after all the creditors are paid." The room spun. Everything I had fought for, all the evidence I had gathered, Ryan's arrest, the victory I thought I had won, it was all meaningless. Ryan and Jessica had outmaneuvered us. They had planned for failure, built in contingencies, and even in defeat, they had won. "I can't believe this," I said, tears streaming down my face. "After everything, they still win." Marcus stood up and walked to the window, his back to me. He was quiet for a long time. "There's something I haven't told you," he said finally, "about Jessica Lane and where she might be." I wiped my eyes. "What do you mean?" He turned to face me. "Remember when we confronted her, when she transferred the $40 million and walked away? Of course. She escaped before we could do anything about it. Claire, do you really think I would let the woman who helped destroy my niece walk away with $40 million and no consequences?" My heart started racing. "What did you do?" Marcus pulled out his phone, scrolled for a moment, then showed me a video. It was security footage from a restaurant, dated 2 weeks earlier. The footage showed Jessica Lane sitting across from Marcus and me at that confrontation. But this footage had audio. "I embezzled $80 million, Jessica's voice said clearly. "I moved it through shell companies over 2 years. Ryan knew everything. We planned it together." "You recorded her," I breathed. "I recorded everything," Marcus said. "Every confession, every admission of guilt. And I sent it all to the FBI, to Interpol, and to the IRS. They've known where Jessica is for the past week. They've been building an airtight case. The $40 million she paid you? That's evidence of consciousness of guilt. Proof she knew she had committed crimes. But she still has money. She still escaped." Marcus smiled, and it was not a kind smile. "Not for long. Watch." He turned on the television. CNN was showing breaking news. At the bottom of the screen, a headline scrolled, "Tech executive Jessica Lane arrested in Monaco on international fraud charges." The news anchor spoke over footage of Jessica being led away by Interpol agents at the Nice Côte d'Azur airport. Jessica Lane, former VP of the now-defunct Morrison Tech, was arrested today while attempting to board a private jet to Dubai. Lane faces multiple charges of wire fraud, embezzlement, and money laundering. Authorities have frozen all known accounts associated with Lane, estimated to contain over $200 million. I stared at the screen, unable to process what I was seeing. "How, when?" I whispered. "The encrypted server Maria retrieved?" It was Jessica's insurance policy against Ryan. But it was also her confession, every email, every transaction, every conversation. The FBI used it to trace all her accounts, all her aliases, all her escape routes. They let her think she'd escaped, then closed the trap. "The $40 million she gave me? Technically, it's not your money, it's restitution. But as the primary victim in the case, You're first in line for compensation once her assets are liquidated. You'll likely get 50 to 80 million dollars, maybe more. The number was so large I couldn't comprehend it. Why didn't you tell me? Marcus sat down beside me, his expression serious. Because I needed Jessica to believe she had won. I needed her to think she was safe so she would make mistakes. If you had known, you might have acted differently, tipped our hand. I'm sorry for keeping you in the dark, but it was necessary. You let me think they had won, that Ryan and Jessica had outsmarted us. Yes, because sometimes the best weapon is patience. You taught me that, Claire. When you refused the first settlement, when you kept digging, even when it seemed hopeless, you taught me that justice isn't about the quick win. It's about the complete win. I should have been angry that Marcus had kept this from me, but instead I felt something else. Relief, gratitude, and for the first time since this nightmare began, genuine hope. What happens now? I asked. Now we wait. Jessica will be extradited to the United States to face charges. Ryan will be offered a deal to testify against her in exchange for a reduced sentence. The bankruptcy will be challenged because the trust transfers were made with fraudulent intent. It'll take time, maybe years, but eventually you'll be compensated. And my daughter? I asked, my hand on my stomach. What do I tell her about her father? Marcus's expression softened. You tell her the truth, that her father was a complicated man who made terrible choices, that her mother fought for justice and won, that she comes from a family that doesn't give up, even when everything seems lost. Over the next month, the legal machinery ground forward. Jessica was extradited to the United States. Ryan accepted a plea deal, 12 years in federal prison in exchange for full cooperation and revelation of all hidden assets. The Delaware Trust was challenged and eventually dissolved, its assets seized as proceeds of fraud. Tech Giant recovered most of its money through insurance and settlements. Morrison Tech was liquidated, its assets sold off. The AI security product was exposed as worthless, a scandal that sent shockwaves through Silicon Valley. And I, Claire Morrison, former tech CEO's wife, now pregnant and living in a modest apartment in Oakland, began rebuilding my life. But there was one more thing I needed to do, one final piece of closure that required me to face Ryan Morrison one last time. 4 months into my pregnancy, showing now in a way I couldn't hide, I visited Ryan in federal prison for the last time. The morning sickness had finally passed, replaced by an energy I hadn't felt in years. My daughter, because the ultrasound had confirmed it was a girl, was healthy and growing stronger every day. Ryan was brought into the visitor's room, looking gaunt, older somehow, the orange jumpsuit hanging loose on his frame. He saw my pregnant belly immediately, and his face went pale. "You're pregnant," he said flatly when he picked up the phone. "Yes." "Is it mine?" I almost laughed. "Of course it's yours. I haven't been with anyone else." He stared at me through the glass, emotions I couldn't read crossing his face. "Why didn't you tell me?" "Because I knew what you'd do. You'd use it as leverage, as another asset to control or discard. This baby was never about you, Ryan. She was about me having something you couldn't take away." "She? A girl. I'm having a daughter." Ryan's hand shook. "What are you going to tell her about me?" This was the question I had come to answer, the closure I needed. I'm going to tell her the truth. That her father was brilliant but flawed. That he built an empire on lies and lost everything because of greed. That he made choices that hurt people, including her mother. But I'm also going to tell her that she's not defined by those choices, that she can be whoever she wants to be. Will she know my name? I looked at the man I had once loved, the man who had destroyed our life together, the man who would spend the next 12 years in prison. And I felt something unexpected. Not anger, not hatred, but pity. "That depends on you, Ben," I said quietly. "If you want to be part of her life, if you want visitation rights, if you want to actually be a father, we can discuss it. But Ryan, you need to understand something. I'm not doing this for you. I'm doing it for her. Every child deserves to know where they came from, even if the story is complicated." "Why would you offer that?" he asked, genuinely confused. "After everything I did to you?" "Because I learned something from all of this. Revenge feels good in the moment, but it doesn't heal wounds. Holding on to anger doesn't change the past. What heals is building something better, being someone better. And I want my daughter to see a mother who chose grace over hatred, even when hatred was justified. This was my subtle engagement moment, the wisdom I needed to share not just with Ryan, but with anyone listening to this story. Forgiveness isn't about excusing what someone did. It's about freeing yourself from carrying their sins. Ryan was crying now, something I had never seen. I'm sorry, Claire. I know those words mean nothing after what I did, but I am genuinely sorry. I destroyed the best thing in my life because I confused value with love. Yes, you did, I agreed. But you also taught me something important. I spent 8 years thinking I wasn't enough, that I had to sacrifice everything to be worthy of love. You proved that wrong in the worst way possible. I was always enough. You just weren't capable of seeing it. I stood up, preparing to leave. Claire, wait. Will you bring her to visit when she's born? Maybe, if you prove you've changed. If you show me you can be someone worth knowing. Right now, you're just a name on a birth certificate. What you become beyond that is up to you. I walked out of that prison knowing it might be the last time I saw Ryan Morrison for years, possibly forever. And I was okay with that. Because my life wasn't about him anymore. It was about the future I was building for my daughter. That night, I had dinner with Marcus and Sarah at Marcus's home, a beautiful house in Pacific Heights I had never visited before. It was filled with photos, a lifetime of cases and connections. But one photo dominated the mantle. A young woman with my eyes and Marcus's smile. My mother. She would be proud of you, Marcus said, following my gaze. Everything you've accomplished, how you've handled this nightmare, the person you've become, she would be so proud. I wish she was here, I said, tears forming. I wish she could meet her granddaughter. In a way, she will, Marcus replied. Every time you look at your daughter, every time you teach her to be strong and independent, every time you show her that women can survive anything, your mother will be there. That's her legacy, passed through you. Oh. We spent the evening talking about the future, about my plans and dreams. Marcus surprised me with an offer. I want you to come work for Sterling Legal Group, not as a consultant, but as a full partner. You've proven you have investigative instincts, legal insight, and more importantly, the ability to see cases from the victim's perspective. We need that. I don't have a law degree, I protested. No, but you have something better. Real experience, street smarts, empathy. I have enough lawyers. What I need is someone who can build cases, find the truth, and fight for people who have nowhere else to turn. Someone like you. Sarah raised her wine glass, grinning. I've been telling him this for weeks. You're a natural. Say yes. I looked at these two people who had become my family, who had stood beside me when I had nothing, who had believed in me when I couldn't believe in myself. Yes, I said. After the baby is born, yes. The next few months passed in a blur of legal proceedings and preparations. Jessica Lane pled guilty to multiple charges in exchange for a 20-year sentence. The bankruptcy case was resolved, with me receiving $75 million in compensation from liquidated assets and restitution. Tech giants settled their lawsuit for an undisclosed amount. And on a sunny morning in June, 6 months after Ryan's arrest, I went into labor. Marcus drove me to the hospital, staying by my side through 12 hours of labor. Sarah arrived with flowers and stuffed animals. And when my daughter was born, tiny and perfect and screaming with life, I held her and cried tears of joy and relief and exhaustion. What are you naming her? The nurse asked. I looked at Marcus, at this man who had saved me, who had become the family I needed. Grace, I said, Grace Sterling Morrison. Because after everything, Grace is what saved us. Marcus's eyes filled with tears. Sterling. You're her grandfather now, I said simply, whether you want to be or not. He held my daughter, this tiny life that represented hope and new beginnings, and I saw him transform. The hard lawyer, the ruthless fixer, became just a grandfather holding his granddaughter, promising her silently that he would protect her the way he had failed to protect her grandmother. 2 weeks later, still adjusting to sleepless nights in the chaos of new motherhood, I received a visitor at my new home, a comfortable house in Oakland that Marcus had helped me buy. Maria Lopez stood at my door, looking nervous but hopeful. Mrs. Morrison, I hope I'm not intruding. I heard about the baby and wanted to bring a gift. She handed me a beautifully wrapped package. Inside was a handmade baby blanket and a card that read, "For Grace, may she grow up in a world where women help each other survive. Thank you for showing me courage." Maria, thank you. And please call me Claire. We're not Mrs. and Miss anymore. We're survivors. Maria smiled, tears forming. The FBI offered me witness protection, but I turned it down. I want to rebuild my life here, in the open. I'm starting a consulting business, helping other people escape toxic workplaces. I wanted you to know, in case you ever need help with cases. I invited her in for coffee, and we talked for hours. About her experience with Ryan and Jessica, about the courage it took to come forward, about building new lives from the ashes of old ones. As Maria left, I realized something important. This story wasn't just about me defeating Ryan and Jessica. It was about every person who had been betrayed, defrauded, or destroyed by people they trusted. It was about Maria finding courage, about Marcus finding redemption, about Sarah finding purpose, about me finding myself again. That night, with Grace sleeping in her bassinet beside my bed, I opened my laptop and started writing. Not a legal brief or an investigation report, but something different. A memoir. I wrote about the discovery of the burner phone, about the mansion and the motel room, about Marcus and Sarah and the long fight for justice. I wrote about pregnancy and betrayal, about billionaire lawyers and federal investigations, about the moment I realized I was stronger than I ever knew. I titled it, "The Divorce Trap: How I Escaped My Husband's Billion-Dollar Scheme." The manuscript poured out of me over the next 3 months, written in stolen moments between feedings and diaper changes. Marcus read drafts, offering legal advice about what I could and couldn't say. Sarah fact-checked my timeline. Maria contributed her perspective. When I finished, I sent it to a literary agent who had read about my case in the news. She called the same day. "Claire, this is incredible, raw, honest, empowering. Every woman who's been through divorce, betrayal, or financial abuse needs to read this. I can sell this. The question is, are you ready for what comes next?" "What comes next?" I asked. "Fame, publicity, interviews, your story going viral. Once this book is published, your life will never be private again. Are you prepared for that?" I looked at Grace sleeping peacefully, at the life I had built from nothing, at the future stretching ahead of us. "Yes," I said. "I'm ready, because if my story can help even one woman escape a situation like mine, then it's worth it." The agent laughed. "Oh, it's going to help a lot more than one woman. Trust me." She was right. The book sold to a major publisher for a 7-figure advance. It was scheduled for publication the following spring, with a publicity tour planned across 20 cities. But before all of that, there was one more thing I needed to do. One more loose end to tie up. The book was in final edits. Grace was 6 months old and thriving, and I had just accepted Marcus's partnership offer at Sterling Legal Group. My new life was taking shape, built on foundations of truth and justice and hard-won wisdom. That's when the message came. I was at home, working on case files while Grace napped, when my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown international number. "Congratulations on the baby. I always knew you were stronger than him. Maybe we're not so different after all." Jessica Lane, like, my blood ran cold. She was supposed to be in federal prison, awaiting sentencing. How was she sending messages? I called Marcus immediately. "Someone's impersonating her," Marcus said after I read him the message. "It's probably a journalist trying to provoke you into a response, or a troll who read about your case." "It's her," I said, certain. "I can feel it." "Claire, Jessica Lane is in a federal detention facility in Virginia. She has no access to phones, no way to send messages. It's not her." But I couldn't shake the feeling, the wording, the tone, the specific mention of Grace. It felt like Jessica. That night, unable to sleep, I did what I used to do as an investigative journalist. I researched. I dug. I followed threads that most people wouldn't even notice. And I found something that made my blood run cold. Jessica Lane had been released from federal detention 3 days earlier. Not freed, not acquitted, but transferred. She had been cooperating with federal prosecutors, providing testimony against other executives involved in similar schemes. In exchange for her cooperation, she had been moved to a lower security facility and given limited supervised communication privileges. Someone had screwed up. In the chaos of her transfer, Jessica had gotten access to a phone, just for a moment, just long enough to send one message. To me. I stared at the message for hours, Grace sleeping peacefully beside me, trying to understand what Jessica wanted. Was this a threat, a taunt, or something else? Maybe we're not so different after all. The words haunted me, because in some ways Jessica was right. We had both been willing to do whatever it took to survive. She had chosen fraud and betrayal. I had chosen truth and justice. But we had both been ruthless in our own ways. The next morning, I met with Agent Reynolds at the FBI field office. "Mrs. Morrison, I apologize for the breach," she said, clearly embarrassed. "It should never have happened. Jessica Lane's communication privileges have been revoked. It won't happen again." "I'm not here to complain," I said. "I'm here because I need to know something. What did Jessica tell you? What information did she provide that was valuable enough to earn her privileges?" Agent Reynolds hesitated. "That's confidential. Please, I need to know if I'm in danger, if my daughter is in danger." She studied me for a long moment, then pulled out a file. Jessica Lane provided information about a network of executives across Silicon Valley engaged in similar fraud schemes. Names, companies, offshore account structures. She gave us everything in exchange for a reduced sentence and eventual entry into witness protection. Witness protection? You're going to let her disappear? She'll serve 15 years first, and she'll live the rest of her life looking over her shoulder with a fraction of the wealth she once had. That's not freedom, Miss Marsford. That's a different kind of prison. I left the FBI office feeling unsettled. Jessica would eventually walk free, albeit under a different name, in a different city, with her life constrained by rules and monitoring. It wasn't the justice I had imagined. It wasn't her rotting in prison for decades. But maybe that was the point. Maybe real justice isn't always neat and satisfying. Maybe it's complicated and messy and leaves you with questions that don't have easy answers. This was my third subtle engagement moment, the shared experience I needed to acknowledge. Life doesn't give us the endings we see in movies. Sometimes the villain escapes. Sometimes justice is incomplete. Sometimes we have to be satisfied with good enough instead of perfect. That afternoon, I made a decision. I opened my phone, looked at Jessica's message, and typed a response. "You're right. We both did what we had to do to survive. The difference is I can sleep at night. Can you?" I hit send before I could second-guess myself. The response came an hour later. "Probably not, but I'll have 15 years to figure it out. Take care of Grace. She deserves better than both of us gave her." And then, silent, the number went dead, disconnected. Jessica Lane disappeared back into the federal system, and I never heard from her again. Or so I thought. 1 year after Grace's birth, my memoir, The Divorce Trap, became a bestseller. 16 weeks on the New York Times list. Interviews, talk shows, speaking engagements at women's advocacy events. The book opened doors I never imagined. Tech Giant's CEO reached out personally, apologizing for their role in Ryan's fraud and offering me a board consulting position. I accepted. Then came an unexpected letter from Ryan in prison. "Dear Claire, I read your book 3 times. You were honest about everything. I've been in therapy, working through why I made those choices, understanding the narcissism and greed that drove me. I'm not asking for forgiveness, but I'm asking for something else. I want to meet Grace. Not now, but someday when she's old enough. I want to try to be present moving forward. Think about it. Ryan. Marcus was suspicious. He's manipulating you." But Sarah disagreed. People can change. Maybe prison gave him perspective. I thought about Grace, now walking and babbling, about the questions she would ask someday about her father, about the woman I wanted her to see in her mother. I wrote back, "When Grace is 5, if you've continued therapy and shown genuine change, we can discuss supervised visits, but you'll have to earn every moment. This is your one chance." His response came quickly. "I won't waste it, thank you." My work with Sterling Legal Group thrived. I specialized in financial abuse cases, using my investigative skills to uncover hidden assets. We helped dozens of women escape situations like mine. The Morrison Foundation provided free legal services and financial education to divorcing women. Sarah ran operations, Marcus served as senior advisor, and Maria's consulting business flourished alongside our mission. On Grace's second birthday, we celebrated at Marcus's house. As I watched Grace blow out candles, surrounded by people who loved her, I felt complete, genuine happiness for the first time in years. That night, I started my second book. Not a memoir, but a practical guide for women facing divorce and financial abuse. Combined with stories from women we'd helped, it could be truly useful. Then Agent Reynolds called with shocking news. Jessica Lane was attacked in prison. She's in critical condition. Another inmate connected to someone she testified against. Revenge. Will she survive? They don't know yet. I should have felt satisfaction. Instead, I felt only sadness. Jessica had been brilliant, capable. She could have built an empire legitimately. Instead, she chose shortcuts and lies. Now she lay fighting for her life, facing decades more in prison if she survived. Was this justice or just more tragedy? Grace woke crying, needing her mother. I went to her, holding her close, because that's what mothers do. We show up, we comfort, we protect. Mama's here, baby. Mama's always here. The opposite of betrayal isn't revenge, it's trust. The opposite of destruction isn't retaliation, it's creation. In the rubble of my destroyed marriage, I had built something better. A career helping others, a foundation supporting women, a daughter who would know her worth, a chosen family who loved me. That was my victory. Not Ryan in prison, not Jessica's suffering, but this life, this purpose, this love. 5 years after my divorce, I received a letter from a Monaco law firm. Inside was a will and handwritten note. Dear Claire, if you're reading this, I'm dead. The prison attack damaged me more than anyone realized. I've been living on borrowed time, and it's finally running out. I know you have no reason to care. I helped destroy your life, but I want you to know something. We both fought to survive in a world designed to destroy ambitious women. You chose the honest path. I chose shortcuts. You built something real. I built something that collapsed. I've spent 5 years reading your books, following your foundation's work. You became someone genuinely important. I'm leaving you everything. 40 million invested over the years, now worth 70 million. Use it for the foundation. Help more women escape situations like we put you in. This isn't redemption, but maybe I can be useful in death. Tell Grace some people learn from mistakes and some don't. Tell her to be like you. I'm sorry for everything. Jessica Lane, real name, Jennifer Lauren Martin. Attached was a photo of a young girl at a piano, maybe 8 years old. On the back, Jenny Martin, age 8, before everything went wrong. Jessica had died 3 days earlier. She left me millions. Stolen money that would now fund free legal services and emergency support for escaping abuse. Marcus asked if I could live with accepting it. She was a child once, I said, looking at young Jennifer's photo. Before Ryan, before fraud, before everything, she was just a little girl. The Morrison Foundation accepted the bequest. $70 million to help thousands of women. We named a wing after her, the Second Chance Wing, with a plaque reading, "For those who lost their way but still believed others deserved better." Some board members resigned over honoring Jessica's memory, but I stood firm. She can't be redeemed, but refusing money that helps thousands just to make a moral point seems wrong. We're using her failure to build other people's success. And Grace turned 5, and I kept my promise. Ryan had continued therapy, stayed out of trouble, written Grace monthly letters I saved for her. The first supervised visit was difficult. Grace hid behind me when Ryan knelt to her level. "Hi, Grace. I'm your father. You can call me Ryan for now. Mama says you made mistakes." "I did, big ones, but I'm trying to be better. Can you come home?" Ryan's eyes filled with tears. "Not for a long time, but we can visit if you want to." "I want to," Grace said. Over 2 years, we visited monthly. I watched Ryan slowly build a relationship with his daughter, always supervised, always within my boundaries. Grace deserved to know her father. Ryan was doing the work to deserve that chance. That was enough. 8 years after my divorce, I stand before hundreds at the Morrison Foundation Gala. Grace, now 8, sits in the front row beside Marcus. 9 years ago, I lived in a motel with $3,200 and no hope, I begin. Today, our foundation has helped over 12,000 women across 23 cities. The applause is thunderous. That evening, my phone buzzes with a text from an unknown number. Mrs. Morrison, my name is Amanda. I heard you speak tonight. I'm in a motel with my 2 daughters, escaping a marriage that's destroying me. Your story gave me hope. I'll be at your office Monday at 9 a.m. Thank you for showing me survival is possible. Tears stream down my face as I type back, Amanda, I'll be there at 9. And I promise you, survival isn't just possible. Transformation is possible. You're going to be okay. We'll make sure of it. 9 years ago, I was Amanda. Broken, desperate, certain my life was over. Today, I'm the person who gets to tell other Amandas their lives are just beginning. That's not revenge. That's redemption. Grace is waiting when I get home, excited about a butterfly in our garden. Look, Mama, can you believe it used to be a caterpillar? I kneel beside my daughter, watching the butterfly prepare to fly. Yes, baby, I can absolutely believe it, because I lived it.